We're in the midst of that hateful frenzy, and as the fury of war sweeps across Rene, we're learning a lot about some familiar faces and some old foes. Ready to break down the most recent episode? Well, let's go after a message from our Heroes of Edara. Hey there, this is Colin, creator of the 7th Valkyrie. If you're hearing this, it means you're listening to the public version of TABTA. And I really appreciate that. It keeps the algorithm happy, it keeps us growing. But if you want to get a little fun personal message every week with behind-the-scenes stories, funny little bits, other insight into the creative process, you can hop over to our Patreon and become a Hero of Edara. You'll support the series, you can shape the future of the 7th Valkyrie, and find a whole lot of fun bonus content along the way. You can get started completely for free, and then if you decide you want to chip in and get bonus content, early access, and a whole lot more and help us along the path of heroes towards a whole lot of cool checkpoints, then you can do that. It's patreon.com/7th Valkyrie, that's 7THVALKYRIE, and give it a look. With that, on into the show. Hello everyone and welcome to TABTA, the adventure behind the adventure for the 7th Valkyrie, where we watch one series go from total obscurity to maybe 7 seasons in a movie, or maybe we just find the power of friendship along the way. I'm your host Colin Sharp, creator and current voice of the 7th Valkyrie, and this week we're talking about That Hateful Frenzy Part 2. I believe that is Season 2, Chapter 31, so if you have not finished that, stop listening, because you're going to get some spoilers. 3, 2, 1. Everybody had a chance to pause and turn off, reach for the thing. Awesome, great. Let's get into it. So, first let's break down inside the episode. What happened in part 2? Well, first of all, we have kind of the tail end of this initial spat between Krona and BC, where she's kind of really out of it after using Scene this time, and he just comes in and pumps her full of drugs. They talk about their past. We see some of the capabilities that he has, his ability to inject her with a morphing metal arm, which is pretty cool. And we also learn a little bit about how their relationship functioned, the dynamic that they have, what the nature of their relationship even was, and we see it's just layered with anger and resentment and shots at each other, but also a weird kind of chemistry. But there's not really much time for them to dwell further on it because the families are arriving, and we start learning about how the battle starts to flow. We learn about the gifted, the war gifted, the people above even that, like Nightmare herself. And we get an encounter with the Sandglass Blade, Rene, this is the first time we've heard of her. We've heard about her steel gaze and a little bit of what builds her up as this former mercenary king, this ice-cold leader of the Erasmus Pact, and she shows up and just is so not interested in Krona's games to the point where he's like, I can't even get hype off this chick. Woman, really. Badass is a better description. And after all this, we have another little confrontation between BC and Krona, and that leads us eventually to BC telling him to fuck off forever, and getting tracked down by Drake, which is, he is like, I will avenge my people, and she's like, you have no idea what the hell is going on. Get the fuck out of me unless you want to be the first person to die, but I am not even bothered with you right now. And that kind of, the fact that his flames are receding away from her, and she's about to do something really, really fucking dangerous, actually is he's like, okay, we'll hold off for now. And then, of course, we have this buildup of the reason that people truly feared Nightmare. And we start to really unpack some of the nature of this incredibly traumatic history that she's got of being this walking, living weapon that can change the battlefield, that is feared by many, and we'll learn more about that as the time goes on. But it's really like all of a sudden we see, really for the second time, because I guess the Stroke of Midnight we saw her really unleash her power, but this is when we note it for the first time in such drastic scope when it comes to how it changes a battle. And that's where we leave going into the next chapter. But I want to actually talk a little bit about battle tactics and how I kind of come at them in our second segment, which, as you guys know, is outside the episode. This is giving you guys a little behind the scenes. So to take a step back a little bit, a lot of this series, and I've told you guys this before, I sort of discover as I'm writing it. I have somewhere like 250 pages of notes and almost 1,100 pages of a previous version of this story that I wrote. And a lot of it's defunct now because they're ideas, but like they're, and some of them were kind of running over the same stuff, but within them you have the fragments of all what I did, and within them you kind of have the spine of the series. A lot of that iteration for the first 4 years of Seventh Valkyrie creation was just trying to figure out what the series really was, and I had to write it, and I had to rewrite it, and I had to think and try, and and as kind of like scoring away marble, like over time you kind of settle in on something, and that was kind of the spine of the series, and that is pretty firm and pretty solid. But that kind of splinters out, and on all the bridges and branches, I'm constantly discovering little details, peeking in between the cracks. And when this applies to the kind of the war stuff in Hateful Frenzy, I have found reading fantasy books in the past that writing about war can be super dull, which is weird to think about. Sometimes you can get just like a little bit lost in all the details, especially people who are huge fans of like military tactics. Sometimes like the movements and the formation, you just kind of get lost and you lose a little bit of that, I don't know, the realism to it, like the emotional realism. Like we know that these things are happening, and if we had a map to study them, it would make sense, but we're not on a map. We have words, and so they can kind of get jumbled up. And so when I try to do it, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at all, I try to describe the battle and the important elements in sort of broad strokes that make sense, where you could kind of judge it, and give a short description of what's happening. And I try to make it in a way that's kind of cool to discover and read about. And it's also cool to discover for me. I'm always leaning towards giving a little bit of a taste of the bigger world, because I'm an omniscient narrator to a degree. And so I have to be, I try to be real and be like, it's not like everything that's happening is the most dangerous thing that's ever happened. It's like, oh, this is the biggest battle since the war. Okay, like these are some of the most powerful people. Always giving, an inclination that, this is within the scope of Rene, this is a hugely important thing. But within the scope of the world, there's a big world out there with a lot yet to uncover. So I like to put those little hooks and those little inclinations, and it's like, oh, where the way things happened in the war when it was on massive scales, like even this is not as big as some of the hugest battles. And but anyway, I also think that that's kind of how I give a little taste of the rest of the world that we can come back to later. But I also think, getting back to kind of how we approach the way we talk about battles and fights, for example, hand-to-hand combat, or like battles between gifts, I try to think about having clear dynamics, and in some clear stakes, because I think that helps make the twists and turns and tactics just a little bit better. Like one gifted beats most Edarans, but a formation beats a formation of unorganized gifted. A war gifted can beat a formation, but defensive strategies and formations and fortifications can also take out a war gifted. And then you have stuff like light corps, elite soldiers, good strategy, and all of those things can change the course of a battle. So, and I hope that by giving you a little bit of a piece of how things are moving, it makes sense when they start to evolve, and as the battle starts to change, we were able to say that, like, oh, these two cities were stuck in a deadlock, but then, the Machine King's men, the Turncoats, and Nightmare together really helped shift the battle to the shore of the new city, and then all of a sudden things are changing from there. So, and now it's like, all right, they're fortified, they have the defense, but Nightmare's here, but also Meridi just got back, or she's heading back. Like, what's going on? So anyway, there's a lot of fun dynamics, and it gives us a lot to play with. So even if, it's not like a simulation that we could write because it is a story, I like to give you guys some building blocks to think about how things could proceed. But to hear how they will proceed, you'll have to keep listening to Chapter 32, The Ones Who Stand, which comes out on Friday, Part 1. The rest, if you're a Hero of Edara, you can listen to that right now on our Patreon, and we got more chapters coming down the pipeline soon, guys. Anyway, this has run really long. I got excited, but love you all. Take care. Have a good one, and I will see you all on Friday.